Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Jenny Mitich is an expert and content creator when it comes to all things keto and carnivore. Jenny used the carnivore diet to lose over 50 pounds and has passed along what she has learned to help thousands of people transition to the carnivore lifestyle. She is a long term carnivore and full time content creator who is passionate about helping people take charge of their metabolic health. She believes that people should know their numbers and empowers them to do so with her educational content and engaging in individual and personal experiments. Her new and highly anticipated book, Complete Carnivore: Achieving Better Health Through a Meat Based Diet, will be released sometime in the fall of 2025 and is now available for pre order on Amazon. Whether you're a newcomer to carnivore or just love eating meat, Complete Carnivore offers something for everyone who wants to achieve and sustain optimal health. Jenny resides in the Chicagoland area with her husband, Goran, and twin sons, Max and Harry. She enjoys reading, traveling the world, and, of course, devouring ribeyes. You can find Jenny on YouTube at Jenny Mitich and on Instagram at Mama Mitich. Jenny Mitich, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey. This is something I've been looking forward to, so thank you so much.
It's an honor to host you. It's been a long time coming. And I asked you before we started recording how we have this amazing superpower of traveling to the same damn conferences, being in the same room, and we never have gotten to meet each other in person. Unbelievable.
I know, it's so wild. I swear I've seen you in passing, but then there's like not a good opportunity to chat. But yeah, we're gonna remedy that at the next one.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Absolutely. I was listening to my really good friend Tony Pascola's podcast, who you were recently on, and I was listening to your story, and I got about halfway through, and I'm like, I got to reach out. I've been aware of you and your work for a while. It's been a long time coming to host you on the show, so I immediately reached out to you, and then it wasn't until the very end of the presentation or the podcast episode where you were like, yeah, I just did my first talk at COSI, and I'm like, I knew it. She did the presentation. I just watched this a few weeks ago. I cannot believe I forgot her name. So all the things are connecting for me now.
Yeah, COSI, that was kind of a dream come true. I went to the very first one and I was like, oh man, I'd love to speak at something like this, but I don't know what I would speak about. And then Dave and I have become colleagues, and he was like, hey, do you want to speak at my next COSI? I'm like, yeah, anything for you, Dave. Sure. So it was scary, but it was really fun. I'm one of those weirdos that likes public speaking, so
Me too.
it was cool.
Yeah, me too. I was thinking like to prepare a 15-minute talk would be so challenging. Whenever I do an interview, maybe you feel the same way. Whenever I do an interview, I get so stressed out that I'm going to run out of things to say, which is so stupid, or like things to ask you about, which has happened like literally zero times, but I always worry about it. To prepare a 15-minute chat must feel like it's all this content, but you must feel like at minute 11, 12, like, holy smokes, I got to wrap this thing up so fast. Was it kind of stressful for you?
Yeah, so 100% trying to condense everything down. It was 14 minutes I had. Exactly. And they had like a clock that flashed saying, you're almost there. So I practiced it. I script all of my content. I don't really, not the interviews, but like all of my YouTube videos, I script them. I try to make them feel like they're not scripted, but they are scripted. So I took that skill over to the speech and then I timed it and practiced it. So that's kind of how that worked out, but it worked out perfectly. I was right at 14 minutes. I always build in 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds of buffer because when you're speaking on stage, you'll know, or like in a public setting, you always do go a little longer. So that buffer was perfect. It was 14 minutes. I'm like, yeah, I got
You
it.
did a great job. It was a
Thank
great
you.
presentation. I love that it combined kind of the science behind carnivore with also the personal story of you and your husband and everything that you guys have gone through. I don't know if you remember this. The very first time they held COSI in 2024, one of the speakers went up to 15 minutes, and you could see Dave just kind of dancing there on the side, and he tapped the guy on the shoulder like, "Hey, we got to wrap it up." And the guy was like, "Okay." And anyway, and he just keeps going into the presentation. It was so awkward. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And actually, I interviewed Dave that weekend on my podcast, and we talked a little bit. He was discussing how it's kind of like herding cats when you're at a conference because you do have such tight slots. And that's just kind of something that you have to be aware of. But yeah, that was it. It does get a little awkward, and I didn't want to be that person.
Thank
I
you.
was like, oh God, that's like my worst nightmare. So I made sure to keep it tight, and I succeeded this time around.
You did great. It was awesome. What were other highlights you've had at that COSI weekend, which included the screening of cholesterol code? It sounded like you made it there for that as well.
Yes, I did. That was amazing. I follow Dave's work very closely. When I first started Carnivore, I watched a ton of his videos. I loved his N of one experiments, and they were a big inspiration to me to do my own. And then, of course, he and Siobhan Huggins are co-owners of Own Your Labs, where I get all my blood work done. So, it was just kind of a natural progression there. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Just if you had any highlights from the weekend.
I had so many highlights. Cholesterol code. I'm so sorry. So yes, with cholesterol code, I have been really looking forward to that documentary because just that first lean mass hyperresponder study it's groundbreaking. It's going to shift the entire paradigm. And yeah, okay, it's just one study, but wow, is it a hell of a study. So being able to watch in real time Dave's reaction to the first data that came out, it was like, ugh, it was amazing. And there was a lot of people in the crowd. Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Sean Baker. I sat next to Eric Westman. Um, Tons and tons of people. But it was still intimate. It was probably maybe like 200 people. Yeah, that was super, super fun. I'm really glad that I was able to go to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really want to talk to you about lean mass hyperresponders as we get into your personal story. But I had the opportunity to watch the movie with my dear friend now, Robin Dobbins. I got to stay with them all weekend. And luckily, well, not luckily, but their daughter ended up getting sick and couldn't swim in a swim meet that she had. So she was able to end up coming, and all of them were featured in the movie. And so to
Nice.
be able to, hang out with them and see how special it was for them. I don't know if you remember, the daughter was asked the question, like, what memories do you have of your mother, like, growing up? And she had to say, like, I really don't have a lot of memories. When we got in the car driving back to our Airbnb, she felt really, really bad about that and saying that. And I was like, it was so good to say that. And you were just being honest. So I thought that was a fun moment.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about that. Yeah, that's truth. And that's what people need to hear. She does not have any positive memories of her mom from that time because mental health, took that away from that family.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal, and people need to know that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, she might have felt bad, but that is one of those moments that it's just perfect for a documentary like that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, kudos to Dave and Sharon for putting that on. They do an amazing job. To think that that's only their second year, and it's the first year was incredible. The second year was just as good. Like they did an amazing job. So grateful for them and all the research that they've done. And yeah, I do want to talk about your story. I'd like to talk about your podcast and all things carnivore with you, including your upcoming book as well. But let's start out with your own personal story. Are you from the Chicago area originally?
Yeah, so I'm from Rockford, Illinois, which is like an hour west. But I've lived in the Chicagoland area now for probably about 6 years. My husband is from Chicago and then lived in the suburbs. So that's where we are now.
Gotcha. Okay. And then did you have any health issues while you were growing up?
No, no, generally pretty healthy. I did have some drug and alcohol issues starting around the age of 13. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, nothing like super hardcore. I think it was mostly just maybe the people I was hanging out with, and I just, the way it is. But yeah, I did have some mental health issues that I self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. So I would say, yeah, that would probably be the most major thing. But as far as like physical conditions, no, I was pretty healthy growing up.
Okay, gotcha. And then how did you end up finding low carbohydrate diets to begin with?
Well, my husband, he had lost over 130 pounds using keto and water fasting between 2016 and 2017. And he had found Dr. Ken Berry on YouTube, like most of us do. And he's like, hey, I want to try this diet, but I want you to do it with me because for him, with his previous relationship, he had always found that it was so hard to do a diet when your partner isn't on board, or maybe even actively sabotaging you with, having the foods you're trying not to eat around. So at that point, I had, how old were our kids? Maybe like almost one. No, they were 6 months old at that time. It was the summer. And I had a lot of weight to lose. I gained 70 pounds when I was pregnant with our twins. And I was trying just the traditional route, the Noom app. It was like, fruits, vegetables, lean meats, very low fat. And I was losing weight very slowly, but I also still kind of, subscribe to the paradigm that, you have to have fruits and vegetables. That's where you're getting all your vitamins and minerals, blah, 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 blah. So my first thing I said to him was like, how can you just eat meat? How would you get all your vitamins and minerals? That was like my number one concern. But I started watching the videos with him because we just watched them here in the living room, and kind of by osmosis, it started to kind of kick in. So cut to 6 months later, it was December. I'd only lost like 20 pounds on Noom in a year. And yeah, okay,
Wow.
great, 20 pounds, but I was like 195 pounds still. I had some significant weight to lose and I was miserable. So I just said, you know what, honey, I think I'm going to try carnivore for 30 days. I had been wearing a continuous glucose monitor for about 3 months at that point, just because I've always kind of been a data-driven person. And I was curious to see if my glucose would shift at all. I was typically in the high 90s, low 100s, following the Noom way. And of course, when I had like 2 cups of grapes, it'd go, you know. So I was just curious to see what would happen. So I actually started carnivore before my husband, believe it or not.
Wow.
We tried to stagger our start dates because we had 1-year-old twins, and I didn't want us to both have keto flu at the same time. And at that point, my husband wasn't like, he was more dirty keto. He wasn't going hard, but he really wanted to. So yeah, I started, and that first month I lost 8 pounds, and my glucose went down into the low 80s overall average. So I was like, there's something to this. I did have very, very bad keto flu that lasted like 6 weeks. I actually think it was a combination of keto flu and oxalate dumping now, but I didn't know what that was back then. So yeah, I suffered, but I lost some weight. And within the first 90 days, I lost 15 and a half pounds, which obviously is significantly more than I'd lost doing the normal way. So yeah, I was hooked, and now here I am, over 2 years on carnivore, and it's just my life now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you experienced something. You talked about your 90-day kind of transition, and it sounds really linear as far as the weight loss goes, but you actually had a little bit of a bump in the second month where the weight loss kind of slowed down. I heard you and Tony talking about this. This is something I get asked all the time. So maybe you could talk about, a carnivore diet that includes dairy. Should I include dairy in my carnivore journey? How would you specifically answer that question to take an aside?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the first month, I did not include dairy. I can't honestly remember why I didn't in the first place, but I think I just wanted to do meat and eggs and butter and things like that. Butter I never include when I'm including dairy. I'm thinking of liquid dairy and cheese when I think of dairy. Butter,
Well said.
has had all the stuff removed. It's just fat. So the second month we were traveling, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to add some half and half into my morning coffees. And I did have some cheese, and I lost 8 pounds the first month. The second month I lost two. So then the third month, I cut the dairy back out and I lost five and a half. So, yes, I do think there is a component to the dairy. That's actually my very first tip for any newcomer. For some people, starting with dairy is helpful because otherwise they feel really restricted. But I do think that if you are having a hard time losing weight on carnivore, cut the dairy, cut the cheese, cut the liquid dairy, and just do it for a month and see what happens. A lot of people don't realize that they're having an inflammatory response to dairy. And I'm talking about conventional dairy, not raw dairy. I haven't tested raw dairy myself to see if I have the same kind of reactions, but to this day, I still cannot do much dairy. I actually have Hashimoto's hypothyroid. I know that now, and man, if I have dairy, I get so puffy, my eyes get puffy, my joints hurt, I get a little bit of mental health symptoms like depression, and I can't do it. So it is something to think about. I think more people are have a reaction to dairy than they think, and most people they've just been eating it their whole lives, so they just don't know until they cut it and then reintroduce. So that's kind of
Well
what I
said.
think about that.
That's really well said. That's along the lines of how I think about it as well. But also, you alluded to this as well. When somebody is taking that step, it can be quite difficult. Was it difficult for you to cut out half and half from your coffee?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. I still want to have it. I drink black now, but like, yes, would I have half and half if I could? 100%.
yeah.
It sucks, but I I prefer feeling good. And then every time I do it, because I'm not going to say I'm a saint, I'm human. Once in a blue moon, I do, and then I suffer. And then I remember why I don't do it. So, yeah, for sure, it's
It's a nice
hard.
reminder. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a nice reminder. Yeah, it's not. I'm like you. I approach it in a similar way, where like this is not the flag I'm going to be planting on the hill for getting started. But if you're not getting the results you want, if you're starting to plateau, you should probably look at this. And I'm kind of like you. Like, I think most people should try a stricter version of a carnivore diet for, whatever time frame makes most sense, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then slowly add some of these things back in and see what you even miss. Like, it will be very difficult to cut half and half out of your diet in the beginning for sure, but you might not miss it as much as you think, or you might notice exactly what you noticed, the suffering. And yes, you prefer to feel good over what the cream tasted like.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we have half and half in the fridge right now because my husband doesn't have the same reactions. And I'm not like, oh, I need the half and half. You know what I mean? It's not something I can't moderate. It's not something I crave. But yeah, that seems to work for me. So I just don't do it anymore.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, being a mom of two very rambunctious kiddos, twins, and going through this transition, I think it's hilarious and actually quite smart that you guys tapered your start so you didn't have the keto flu at the same time. I do want to ask you about transitioning also. But when did you start to decide to make content around carnivore? You must have been quite busy and had your hands full, changing the diet, revamping the kitchen, all that other stuff. Anyway, what made you decide that you wanted to start doing some content around this?
That's another great question. You're so good at asking questions. I feel like I'm on Hot Ones.
Uh,
So I have had a YouTube channel of some form since 2020. Pandemic, we used to do a lot of traveling. So we started with an outdoor channel. It's called Adventures in Jennyland, outdoor camping and travel channel. Then that went to our second channel, which was an Airstream renovation channel. We bought an Airstream vintage in November of 2020, 1989 Airstream Excella, and started renovating that with no experience. We are not carpenters. It's just a project. I like projects. Did that. And then I got pregnant, planned, but it was twins. And I'm like, well, we can't really go camping, can't renovate an Airstream when I'm this pregnant. So why not just do like a twin mom lifestyle channel? So that's what Jenny Mitich originally was. And I was creating content around that, and it was growing pretty slowly. I think I had like 1,600 subscribers when I released my first carnivore content. And I released my 30-day carnivore update and my 90-day carnivore update simultaneously because I had no other carnivore content on my channel. And I watched a lot of like how to build a YouTube channel content. And it said, if you don't have anything else on there, make sure you have a few pieces of the same. So if it does take off, they can kind of feed off of each other. And that worked really well. I kind of knew that carnivore, it was a popular topic. So I had an idea. I thought maybe a few thousand views, but man, that 30-day carnivore update took off. I think currently it has six or 700,000 views on it. I mean, my channel went from 1,600 subs to like 8,600 in a week. And
wow.
it just grew and grew. And then my 6 month carnivore blood work video, that really took off too. So my channel grew exponentially that first 6 months of 2023, well, June to December. And then, yeah, so I just basically switched over all of my content to carnivore. And it's been a really fun kind of like learning experience for me because I'm very curious. I read a lot. I love studying different topics, and I kind of created content first around things that I couldn't find on YouTube, like the carnivore blood work stuff. What are the optimal functional medicine numbers I should be looking for? I shouldn't have to go to a doctor to know what these are. So that's kind of where that first started. And then I just go down all the rabbit holes and kind of figure it out. So I'm learning, and then I share that with my audience. So that's kind of how it evolved. But it wasn't like planned for sure.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened.
That's great. It reminds me a little bit of Carrie Mann, one of our mutual friends, who he was doing YouTube for a long time about homesteading, and then he just released a video about carnivore that had like literally saved his life and was improving his life in so many ways. And did that video, and then all of a sudden, kind of changed his content around that. It sounds very much like that. And on that note, obviously, it's engaging because you got more subscribers when you started doing more carnivore. But that aside, if we put that aside and assume that didn't happen, do you find any of the other topics that you were YouTubing about before, do you find them as engaging as learning about and sharing information about the carnivore diet?
I mean, I was basically just making like vlogs and some things like reviewing products. I did a few product reviews for baby stuff. But the vlog content, I enjoy making that, but I don't think as many people enjoyed watching it. But for me personally, like life satisfaction wise, learning about topics in this niche, yeah, I find it very fulfilling. I mean, I think one of the most important things for anyone that's wanting to start a channel or any kind of content creation is it has to be an intersection between something you're passionate about and something other people want to watch. It has to be an overlap because you could be super interested in something that like five people care about and you're not going to get a lot of views, right? But if there's that overlap, which I do think there is in this niche, people really, really want to get healthy. And yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing. So I'm constantly learning. I mean, when I do these N of one experiments, I'm not like, I don't have my conclusion formed before the data comes in. Sometimes I'll get blood work back and I'll be like, what in the hell is this? And then that takes me down a path like, oh, and then I learn and I'm like, oh my God, I have to share this with my audience. So yeah, I learned so much. I think that's one of the most important and best things about my job now is I get to be constantly learning.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to talk about some of the experience that you or experiments, excuse me, that you've done in the past. Can you tell us what some of these experiments have been and why you've decided to do them and share about them?
Sure. Yeah. So like the very first one I did was a BBB and E experiment. I just wanted to see what my blood work would be before and after. I did one that was strict carnivore versus dirty carnivore to see what kind of differences there would be. And then my most recent ones have been like a 14-day sardine fast. I've done a ton of sardine fasting videos now, and then a 14-day carnivore bar fast. That one was interesting. Um, yeah, and then I think one that I'm actually in the process of filming this week is I wanted to see how long the positive effects of sardines last. So I did the 14-day sardine fast, and then I didn't eat any sardines for a month. And then I got the omega check again. And then I didn't eat any more sardines for another 2 weeks. So at the 6 week mark, did another omega check just to see how long the EPA and DHA and all that stuff stayed in my system. And that was really surprising. I'm really excited to share that one. So just, I don't know, every experiment kind of like gives me ideas for another one, and then I just keep going on with it. I have a few in the hopper that I'm working on right now. But yeah, I think N of one experiments are so much fun because everybody does respond a little bit differently. But this is stuff that anybody can do. If you can order your own blood work online or go get a DEXA scan, you can run an experiment on yourself.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, you're not going to get me to eat sardines anytime soon. I'm sorry. But I've heard it's life-changing. How did you feel eating only sardines for that long?
Oh man, so good. And I am not like a, whoa, I love sardines. I'm like, okay, I'll eat them. I've grown to like them a little bit more, but yeah, that 14-day sardine fast, you feel really good. Your blood glucose goes down very to like what normal blood glucose should be like in the 70s. Your ketones, holy smokes, through the roof. And that's what I love about it the most because my brain is so clear. I have energy. I felt really, really good mentally. The mental part of it, you just feel like you're on top of the world. You're like, yeah, I can do anything. It's just because you have elevated ketones. And then the fat loss is substantial. So the cool thing about a sardine fast is it mimics the effects of a water fast. So if you don't want to water fast or dry fast, like no food whatsoever, you can do a sardine fast, and it's like a variation of a protein sparing modified fast. So you're eating enough protein to maintain your lean muscle mass, but you're tapping into your fat stores because you're not consuming that much fat. I found profound fat loss in my DEXA scans before and after my 10-day and my 14-day. Pretty remarkable. So yeah, I mean, I think realistically, people, they're not going to be doing a 14-day sardine fast. I did it for science, but you know, incorporating a 3-day, a 4-day, maybe once a month can be a great way to reset your system and allow your body to do some autophagy and to tap into those fat stores, which is what we all want, right? So yeah, I am a big advocate for sardine fasting.
Wow. Ugh, okay. Still not going to do it, but it sounds amazing. Everybody who's ever done it says it's amazing for all those same reasons. So thank you for explaining that. As somebody who has done so many experiments and has seen your blood work fluctuate a lot more than I think most people suspect, right? Like most people get an annual checkup, they see what their cholesterol is, and they assume that number is what their cholesterol is always, when it's just absolutely not the case. We're showing that now. It's changing a lot. As you have done so many different experiments and looked at so many different metrics, which ones do you now put the most value in? And which kind of metrics did you used to have a lot of value in that you no longer think really tell you much about the story of what's going on?
Yeah, good question. So, my favorite metrics, if I'm going for cheap and fast for blood work, fasting insulin, number one. I think I always get a comprehensive metabolic panel that has the fasting glucose on it because it's only $10, so why not? And then the A1C, but I find less value in the glucose, fasting glucose and the A1C now. And then, I used to hold a lot of stock on the NMR lipo profile, which is like an advanced lipid particle size test. And don't get me wrong, I still love it. It is a great test, but for me, I'm always an A pattern. I have very healthy cholesterol particles, so I don't feel like I need to get that often. Now I just kind of rely on the standard lipid panel, $10 on ownyourlabs.com, and I look at triglycerides and HDL. I don't even look at LDL because it's just not a great biomarker for metabolic health. So those are probably my top: fasting insulin, fasting glucose, A1C, triglycerides, and HDL. And then I do really like to look at HSCRP for overall systemic inflammation. And then I like to look at vitamin D because almost everybody is deficient in vitamin D and needs to work on that. So it's good to see where you're at. But yeah, probably the advanced particle size test, advanced lipid panel is probably one I don't really look at anymore. Um, yeah, that would probably be what my answer to that question would be.
That's a great list of some very simple and inexpensive markers that anybody could get. I think your argument about the HDL and triglycerides, if you know those two things from a very inexpensive test, you by proxy kind of know a lot of things that's going to pop up on that NMR test. And so I
Right.
agree. I think just having those simple metrics is fantastic. And I want to hear your thoughts about this as well. We do talk about A1C as being this great marker for showing like your 3 month trailing average of blood glucose. I look at it almost like BMI, where it's like for a population, it tells a story. Like if your A1C is 12, I can say like, okay, that's not going to be great. But for somebody who's on carnivore and they notice that their A1C is drifting up from 5.2 to 5.3 to 5.4, this is now a new kind of condition. That the number itself has so many assumptions anyway, like your red blood cells are going to live a certain amount and that might change on a carnivore diet. So I see it more as a value of like, okay, across a population, if a population has a BMI of 45, I assume most of them are not bodybuilders with huge amounts of muscle mass. Is that kind of the way you look at that?
Yeah, so I had that exact same thing happen with my A1C on carnivore. It went up to a 5.7, but I track my glucose with a continuous glucose monitor and I calibrate that glucose monitor, so it's accurate. And I know that my overall glucose levels were like 85 on average. So my A1C and my fasting glucose did not match. My fasting insulin is always between 2 and 5, which is excellent. You want it to be between 2 and 6. So that was kind of a conundrum to me. I had no idea what's going on. I still don't. Maybe it is the red blood cells living longer. I honestly don't know. I don't know that that theory has been proven. It might have been. I don't know. But my thyroid practitioner actually said, "Why don't you just incorporate a berberine?" And so I did. And lo and behold, my A1C went from a 5.6 to a 5.0.
Wow.
I have no idea why, because my glucose is low, but I don't know. It's so weird. So yeah, I do think, the carnivore population, we don't have a reference range for that, right? I mean, that's something that with Own Your Labs, they're trying to kind of build is a open source data set where you can go in for people that are low carb and healthy and see what the actual reference ranges are, because reference ranges are based on each lab. It's based on a certain amount of people at a certain period of time, and most people that are getting testing done are sick. There's something wrong. We want to know what our levels should be when we're healthy. So going for those optimal functional medicine ranges is really important. But yeah, the A1C thing, I'm curious about that. I don't know why that happens for some people.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want people. It's happened so many times that people get so stressed out about that one number when everything else looks good and they feel amazing. I just don't want people to get too, upset about that one number when everything else is good. There's again assumptions baked into that number, and there's not assumptions on the other things, including and especially fasting, insulin, like you said, and triglycerides and HDL cholesterol. So, yeah, I think that's wonderful. You did mention LDL is a number that's not really of a high value. And yeah, through your podcast, you've interviewed Dave Feldman. You do a great job on your podcast. You've been very kind and said some kind things about me in interviewing. You do a great job, and I have to give you a huge compliment because you extracted provided probably the most straightforward and simple explanation about what a lean mass hyperresponder is from Dave Feldman that I've ever heard. It's like the first one I could like, oh, I understand this. This is great. So great job on that interview. But this is part of your own personal story now, where by going through this process and eating carnivore diet, sounds like your LDL cholesterol has gone up as well. Nervous, concerning. How are you feeling about that?
Not concerned whatsoever. Not concerned whatsoever because of all the, Dave's videos, Nick Norwitz's videos, all of the research out there. LDL cholesterol on its own is simply not a great biomarker for any kind of metabolic health or even cardiovascular health. What you should be concerned about is the particle health itself. That's where the NMR comes in. You want to make sure you have a low number of the small dense LDL particles. But like you said, you can tell that from if you have low triglycerides and high HDL, I can pretty much guarantee that you have an A pattern and that your particles are healthy. I'm more concerned about blood sugar because insulin resistance is a causal factor in heart disease and so many of the metabolic health conditions that are out there. So yeah, my LDL cholesterol, yeah, it's within the context of a ketogenic diet, it definitely is high. I'm usually between 175 to 275 for LDL, but my HDL is between 70 and 100, and my triglycerides are between 40 and 60. So I
Amazing.
have a classic lean mass hyperresponder, response to a ketogenic diet. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, in the beginning, maybe I was a little bit, but I had already been so well acquainted with Dave's work that I kind of knew what to look for. But yeah, for just, laymen out there that are getting tests done and all of a sudden their LDL was 100 and now it's 200. Yeah, that'd be scary for sure, especially with all the fear mongering that exists in our, in our interwebs saying that it's bad for us. So yeah, and it's interesting. But no, I don't really look at it. I've done a lot of experiments where I play around with LDL. You mentioned that, people get blood work maybe once a year and they think that's their number all year. It's not how it works, folks. You have a range. You have a range that shifts all the time. So for me, like I said, triglycerides 40 to 60. I don't freak out if my triglycerides, are 40 and then go to 60. That's just kind of my range, right? And anything under 100, I'm happy with. My LDL cholesterol, I've gotten it as low as 119 on Carnivore, doing what's called the Feldman protocol. You eat very high calorie, very high fat for 3 days before a standard lipid panel, and you will see your LDL cholesterol total, triglycerides, particle count, all of those drop. You'll see your HDL go up. And that's just by eating really high fat and lots of calories because you're providing your body with so much energy that it doesn't need to tap into your fat stores. So you don't have to have as many of these LDL particles, these boats that are delivering all that energy to your body. They can be like, oh wow, you gave us enough energy in the form of food. We can get off the roadway, and then they just go back into the liver. Your body is very intelligent. It knows what it needs to do. And yeah, that was a very fun experiment to illustrate. I can change my cholesterol numbers like that, and so can everybody else. It's just knowing that that is a thing.
Yeah. It's one thing to experiment and learn from these things, but once you understand the pattern and you can like call balls and strikes on where your cholesterol is going to be, like, I'll bet I'm going to eat this way and I'll bet my cholesterol will drop this many points. And to not be very wrong, to be like really close to that, I think is just further evidence that it's a really amazing model. And the more time goes on, the more it's being proven versus something that's more untrue. There's always more doubts, more paradoxes, and things that pop up. Where this seems to just be confirmed more and more, where you can like really kind of almost predict where your cholesterol is going to be based on your diet before.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the lipid energy model in action. And, that's the thing with Dave and Nick's research, this second triad study, they're calling it, is we need more and more science like that so we can see what's actually going on. But there's just a lot of clues that it's correct, that it is
Yeah.
the mechanism, the way our bodies do work.
Yeah, well said. You mentioned Nick, and he did that famous Oreo study now. And again, if you were familiar with the model, I don't think you were surprised with what the results were going to be, even though it's so stunning for somebody who has no idea what this is, that Oreos will drop your cholesterol lower than taking a high-powered statin would. But yeah, if you've been in this world and you understand the pattern, it was like, yeah, that didn't really totally surprise most of us.
Yeah, yeah, but that content wasn't created for us. That was
That's right.
created for everyone that doesn't know. So hopefully a lot of people had their eyes opened. And I know they did because that video did so well.
It did. Yeah, it did amazing. I want to go back to the early days of your experimentation, and in hindsight, knowing that your transition was not the best. Mine wasn't either. Mine is going to be 6 months this next, or I'm sorry, 6 years this next week into carnivore. And my transition, I would say, I didn't feel um, digestively really well for a good 5 6 weeks. That took quite a while, even though my mental health was much better, and I was noticing some of the other benefits, which I also want to talk to you about. But now looking back on your transition, what would you have done differently, and how would you recommend that people transition onto carnivore today?
Oh, yeah. So I 100% would have gradually eased onto carnivore. I was eating so many fruits and vegetables. Like I was eating healthy beforehand. So many fruits, so many vegetables, lean meats. The only ultra processed food that I ate was Carb Smart ice cream with a little bit of sugar-free Hershey's chocolate syrup. I'd have that every night. And then I'd have, wait, like maybe a dark chocolate square. But other than that, I mean, my diet was clean, but it was because of all of those. I ate a lot of really high oxalate foods. Quinoa, sweet potato, kiwis, raspberries. Like I was eating dark chocolate. I was eating stuff every single day that was really high oxalate for a long time. So I would now do maybe an 8 week transition. I probably would start by cutting the ice cream and the higher, maybe one or two of the higher oxalate plants, and then do that every single week and then kind of monitor the carbs down as well. I had a very rough start. So yeah, that's what I would do first. But you know, if you don't know what oxalates are, how would you know to do that? You know?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I find the oxalate conversation so fascinating. I think it's a way bigger problem than people assume, or it's not as big of a problem as we're learning about. I kind of mix between the two. But as you and Tony were talking on the Primal Foundations podcast, you mentioned a really great way to know whether you're having a problem with oxalates. Hopefully, the audience knows oxalates are found in a lot of the foods, like you mentioned. They come in different amounts, but they do accumulate. Your body has no use for it, so it has to get rid of it. It has to excrete it. And so if you exceed a certain amount every day, you're accumulating more and more. Can you tell people how they can know whether oxalates are a problem for them?
Sure. So I actually learned this from Sally Norton's book. She is the queen of oxalates. Everybody should pick up her book, Toxic Superfoods. Amazing book. That's how I learned about it. So one of the great ways you can tell if you're oxalate dumping, if you've cut all fruits and vegetables from your diet, let's say you're doing carnivore and you feel like crap for like longer than 2 or 3 weeks, which is the standard keto flu amount. If you're feeling like crap longer than that, you can brew a cup of black tea, nothing else in it, just the tea, drink it, and if you feel better like 30 minutes later, maybe not 100%, but you're feeling a little better, then you're most likely oxalate dumping because black tea is very high oxalate. So the weird thing about oxalates is you don't want to dump them all at once because that's where you feel like crap. You want to dump them slowly, and there's not really like rhyme or reason to it. You could go through oxalate dumping years after you've stopped consuming a particular product. We have no way to predict. So that's why the gradual reduction of carbs for people that are consuming really high oxalate is important. And that T test is just so easy to do. You know, that's nothing.
That's very well explained. Can you even believe that people are going through this much suffering because of spinach? Like, really, you're doing this because of spinach? If
I
it were
know.
cake or ice cream or something, like, yeah, great, at least it tastes good. Like, but for spinach, come on.
And spinach is like the highest oxalate that you can do. And everyone thinks these spinach green shakes are so good. A small enough person, like a 5 foot tall woman, if she did spinach with that much, like 3 days in a row, she could die. That's how hardcore spinach is with oxalates. I think it was it Liam Hemsworth? Chris
Yeah.
Hemsworth was doing vegan or whatever the heck, doing those spinach smoothies every day, and he got really sick. And he's huge. So can you imagine for like a smaller person? So yeah, spinach is the worst. Cut that out. And surprisingly, kale is not very high oxalate. Everyone gives kale a hard time, and it's actually not. But like, who wants to eat kale?
Yeah,
Give me a
exactly.
steak.
Exactly. If you must go eat kale, but yeah, for spinach, come on. It is the one food. I don't do this with any other food, but it's the one food where I'm just like, don't eat that one food. If you have to do almonds, do less. If you have to do a potato every now and again, do less, but just don't eat spinach. Find an alternative. There's so many alternatives out there and it's not even that good anyway. Don't eat spinach. Just cut that one out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%. That should be like the more you know.
Exactly, exactly. I love it. Yes, we are the same age. I know exactly what you're talking about. Going back to your own story again, talking about your results. Most people come to low carbohydrate or carnivore because they want to lose weight. I find that very soon after they have that goal, they kind of forget about the weight loss. That's kind of on lockdown and happening for them. What other things were you noticing, and what things keep you on a carnivore diet today?
Sure. So yeah, obviously weight loss was the number one. But what keeps me on it, mental health improvements, big deal for me. I used to have to take Xanax for anxiety attacks. Occasionally, I didn't take it every day, but if I had an anxiety attack, I had it on hand. I haven't taken a Xanax in 2 years. I don't need to. I don't even have the prescription anymore. So that's a big deal. Things that I noticed that were not expected, I have zero gas. That might be TMI for some people, but you do not have gas on a carnivore diet. That's caused by plants. That was weird, but good. And then I saw a lot of improvements in oral health. I used to use breath mints all the time, and I do not have to use them anymore. It's just not a thing. That was a really big deal too. So those I think would be kind of the biggest things for me. I also really, really like the fact that I am not a slave to food. I can fast like that. If I'm if I'm like, okay, I'm out and about, I'm hungry, I don't have to eat immediately. I don't have that hypoglycemic kind of like, oh, I'm gonna die feeling. I can wait a few more hours and then eat. And then the time saving aspect of it, with a full-time YouTube channel, writing the book, the kids, trying to, be a good wife, exercise, self-care, sleep, you know. Who has time for all of this stuff? I don't want to also have to spend a ton of time in the kitchen. So that's kind of the reasons why I stay on it. It's so easy and delicious, you know?
Yeah.
No one's being like, oh, ribeye, wah, you know? So yeah, so many benefits, so many.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So well said. And I can relate to so many of those other things, especially that food freedom thing. The gas thing is very interesting. Did you ever see the video that went viral last year or the year before? The woman who's like an author and a big proponent of high fiber diets, and her husband take fart walks after their meals?
No, but that sounds
I'll send it
hilarious.
to you. We'll tag it and I'll send it to you. It's so
Okay.
good. It's so good. She's like, yeah, we have high fiber diet. So of course we have lots of flatulence. So we go on 15-minute walks to get it all out. Like, give me a break. Like, this is clearly causing that. Like, come on.
Yeah, like it's just, part of life. Like, no, actually, you're not supposed to be farting that much. It's weird.
Exactly. Okay. Do you want to talk about your presentation at COSI, talking about your husband in particular? Before we do, let's talk about the kids. How are you managing the kids' diets?
Sure.
Knowing what you know about carnivore and being beneficial, it's also kids. You also, hear the thing, I don't want to cause like eating disorders in my kids. Like, how do you manage their diets?
Yeah, so I have a whole video on this where I talk about it. My kids are meat based. So they eat meat at every single meal. But they also eat fruit, a tiny bit of vegetable. They're really not big into it. I don't push it. And then a little bit of organic grain. I do the organic just because I'm trying to lower the pesticide load. Unfortunately, you can't really get super far away from it, but I'm also not going to be a total stickler. Now, when they're at their grandma's house, they will have goldfish. They will have whatever she's cooking. A special treat for them is Old McDonald's. That's what they call it, Old McDonald's.
Love
With
it.
Baba and Dada, with their grandparents, they'll have like chicken nuggets and a small French fry. So my whole thing is, I want them to not have a dysfunctional relationship with food. They don't. I mean, obviously, when they're with us 95% of the time. So they eat probably two full meals a day. They'll have a snack. They still nap, so they're napping during what lunchtime would be. But I also don't think the whole 3 meals a day is necessary. They're super tall. They're as tall as 5-year-olds, and they're three. They've been reading since they were 2.5.
Oh my
A
gosh.
lot of that is because we've been reading to them since they were newborns. We read a lot, and just practice. But they can literally, I mean, like read, not like just a word, like read. They read the whole
Wow.
mac and cheese box when I make it. It's crazy. So yeah, that's kind of what I focus on. I don't want them to go over to friends' houses in the future and be like, "Oh my God, I've never had mac and cheese, so I'm gonna binge it." So I just try to get the healthiest option I can find. And yeah, meat at every meal. I think that is key. Now I'm doing like sometimes they'll have some of our steak, all beef hot dogs. I just find the ones that don't have corn syrup, that don't have a bunch of added crap, and they'll have like four of those cut up. I do bacon and sausage every morning, so they eat that. That's the bulk of the meat in the morning. And then we'll make our own chicken nuggets and things like that. It's really not hard to do. But also, we started carnivore when they were one, so they didn't really have exposure to a lot of the ultra processed foods that are out there. But yeah, they have it from time to time. So as they get older, I'll let them make the decision if they want to be more carnivore like us. We're never going to have ultra processed foods and things like that in the house, mostly because I can't moderate. I cannot have it around. So they're going to kind of have to, but I won't, balk if they want to have some vegetables or something. I think overall, I mean, they're very healthy. So I think the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, I will be curious to see how that goes in the future and their exposure continues to expand. My theory on this, after talking to so many parents and hearing about their experience transitioning themselves and eventually their kids and families over to my theory is I don't think the kids hate it, and I think they notice a difference when they go off of it. And I don't know if it's going to be a really tough time to keep them away from processed foods, or if they are just going to continue to prefer feeling really good, performing well in sports and school. And all the stories that I hear seems like the kids don't necessarily hate not eating all the crap that their friends are eating all the time. Sure, go to a birthday party, but like they feel it, they notice. And I'm guessing I'll be curious to see how it goes. I'm guessing that they will
Yeah.
continue to prefer to eat the way that they're eating.
Well, and I think a lot of that is just being aware of your body. And that's something that we talk about a lot. Like, oh, does your tummy hurt or something like that? Like, we want them to be very aware of their emotions and of the way that they feel physically. We're going to be doing homeschooling just because we travel a lot. And they'd be so bored in public school. They're already so far advanced from a first grader and they're 3. So that probably won't be an issue. But yeah, they're going to run into some things. I mean, we do cake on their birthday. We don't give them a ribeye, we give them a cake. But the funny thing is they don't even eat it. I try to give them some, they're like, "Bah," every year.
That's
I don't even know why
hilarious.
I do cake. I should do ribeye, but
That's what I have observed. Like the more that they're eating in a good way, they just don't really have the taste for it. They don't like it. Maybe it tastes like chemicals. You know what that's like when you step away from some of these things, and you really want the cake to be good, and it's just not even like objectively good anymore,
yeah,
let
it's
alone your
not how
taste
you
buds change.
remember it.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Well said. Okay, again, your presentation in COSI was largely about your husband and his experience. Can you share a little bit about his journey through carnivore and the things that you shared in that presentation?
Sure, yeah. So, as I talked about earlier, he had lost 130 pounds using keto and water fasting, but then the weight loss basically stopped. And now he had hovered between 270 plus or minus 20 pounds for the entire time that we were together. He had lost all that weight before we got together. So when we both went on carnivore, I lost 50 pounds in 18 months, and he lost nothing, nothing. And he was strict too. And, we slapped a continuous glucose monitor on him. We did blood work, we did DEXA scans, and his numbers were garbage, garbage. And he was never in ketosis, even without eating carbs. He'd have zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.3 millimoles per liter ketones with not having touched a carb in 2 months. It was ridiculous. So turns out that he has some very stubborn insulin resistance, I think left over from the time that he was morbidly obese. So you can't live your entire life with no consequences. People come to carnivore at different points in their life, usually in their 40s, 50s, 60s. There are metabolic consequences to the way you lived your life before. And carnivore isn't just going to fix them all. It's not a magic bullet. It can for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it doesn't. And my husband is one of those. He was not responding to carnivore the way he should. So we decided to get back to what we knew worked for him, which was a low carb diet paired with water fasting. And he is an experienced faster. He does 10 to 14-day water fasts. And we would do one per month of the long. And then we were measuring with continuous glucose monitor, DEXA scans, and blood work every month. So this was kind of like our experiment to see what would happen. And then, that was going to be my speech at COSI. So that was a good motivator too. And yeah, we got him from 270 down to 218, I think was his lowest. And we've been able to make some improvements in his blood work. His visceral fat went from 9 pounds to 5. Um, and yeah, lots of improvements, but still some work to do. I mean, we want to get the visceral fat down to under 1 pound. We'd like to get his overall weight down to between 190 and 200, and then from there build up a lot of muscle. But yeah, it's a process. I mean, it's a lot. But we did kind of figure out what worked for him. And one of the reasons we did this was because of the people I talk to on my YouTube channel. Comments that I get like, carnivore isn't working for me. I'm doing everything right. What's going on? There's more people like that out there than you think. So that this was important for us to kind of figure out a solution that wasn't pharmacological. Not that I'm against, medications, but I do think that trying something that doesn't have a bunch of side effects is important. So I wanted to give people that option. So yeah, it's been quite the journey, and we're still on it. We just gained like 10 pounds because we were traveling the past 2 months, and I'm on like hormone replacement therapy right now, and my appetite has been insane. And
Wow.
then for him, if he smells a donut, he gains 10 pounds. So it's just like we have to be so strict. And we're human. And any influencer that says that they don't have issues with, weight going up and down and cheat meals and things like that is lying. Lying. I like to be as transparent as possible. So yeah, we it does work, and we're getting back into the fasting for him too this month. But yeah, it was quite the experiment for sure.
Well, I appreciate the openness and honesty. I think that is really authentic. And you're right. We all have things we deal with. And yeah, fasting to me, if when you're able to do fasts, I think to me that's like gold standard. That's where you see the most things improve, most weight loss, the most skin kind of reabsorb into the body with autophagy. Do you kind of find it to be gold standard as well?
Oh, yeah. Fasting is like that secret sauce. If you're not having good results and you're doing everything else right, you need a reset. And fasting is one of the quickest ways you can do it. And I don't think you need to do like 10 to 14-day water fasts like my husband per se. You're not going to start with that, but you could start with a 3-day or even a 1 day if you've never fasted. Start with 24 hours and then 36 and then 48. Experiment from there. But yeah, you can see some massive, massive benefits from fasting. I think it should be incorporated into everybody's lifestyle, at least maybe quarterly or monthly or something like that. You have to figure out what works best for you. And then, of course, intermittent fasting on a daily basis as well. You don't want to be constantly eating because your insulin response will be all over the place.
Right. Well, since you have gone through some of these longer fasts, I did have some specific questions for you. The first being, do you notice the pattern that I've seen with most people where the hunger, you can do anything inside 24 hours pretty easy. That's kind of a given. I do that all the time. But the hunger kind of rises on the second day before it kind of seems to drop out on the third day and never really return. Like maybe little like waves here and there, but nothing nearly as much as the second day. And then the second question is the transition out of a longer fast. Is there anything you've learned to make that helpful? Sometimes you hear that that can be a little bit dicey for people and they need to be careful of certain things. Any lessons you've learned there?
Yeah, so my husband, he always says days 2 and 3 are the worst on a water fast. But once you get past that, smooth sailing. That's why he's able to do these 14-day fasts. Now, he has a lot of fat on his body still, a lot of energy that he can tap into. A really thin, athletic person with like, 10% body fat probably shouldn't be doing a 14-day fast. But yeah, if you have the energy on your body, you can definitely do that. And days 2 and 3 are the worst. So doing a 2 to 3 day water fast, of course you're going to have a hard time because those are the crappiest days. As far as easing back into it, when my husband does the longer fasts, what we do is he'll have like eggs, maybe some like eggs and bacon or something, or maybe just some ground beef. Or if he's doing more of a keto route, he'll have a lettuce salad with a little bit of like olive oil or something on it, something light. Um, uh, and then the next meal is just a normal carnivore meal, you know? So that seems to be effective for him. But you do have to experiment. Everybody's a little bit different. But yeah, I wouldn't advise going into like a full-blown hardcore like steak dinner with oysters and tons of crazy stuff your first meal back. Like give your body a break, ease back into it.
Well said. I like that advice. And it's also interesting. You would think after going that long without food, you'd be famished. And what I've noticed with most people is they just go back to eating their regular normal amount. They don't feel any more hungry. Like I know for myself, I can eat about a pound and a half of red meat at a time. And anytime I try to push it and have a few more bites, I just can't really do it. I would just eat the same. Is that something you noticed also?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, basically, I actually eat less that first couple of meals because my stomach has shrunk. to a degree. But
Good
yeah,
point.
I'm never just like like, oh, I gotta eat everything. That doesn't happen. No.
Yeah, got it. Well, I am very curious to get your book when it comes out. It's very highly anticipated in the carnivore community. We've had a few carnivore cookbooks. Courtney Luna, our other mutual friend, just put out her book, which is amazing. There's a few others out there. So tell us about the book. I would love to invite you back on to talk specifically about that closer to when it comes out. But until then, can you tell us at least a little bit about the story that you wanted to tell, what you think was lacking out there that you really wanted to capture in this book?
Sure. So this book, I view it as the like encyclopedia for carnivore. So the first half of the book, the first like 200 pages, is an in-depth guide to the carnivore diet, getting started with carnivore, any kind of issues that you run into. There's a whole troubleshooting section. There's an FAQ section that talks about all of the, common questions that come up, and I've, cataloged these from my YouTube channel, so we have all the answers there. Um, Also, like a myths section. So we talk about all of those, LDL cholesterol is causal in heart disease, and you get all your vitamins and minerals from plants and stuff like that. We address all of those myths. And then I think one of my favorite chapters in the first half of the book is the monitoring your progress chapter, where we go into all of the DEXA scans, blood work, arterial scans, continuous glucose monitoring, ketone monitoring, all that kind of stuff, and give you the ranges you should be aiming for, where you can get these things done or purchase them, and all that kind of stuff. Because I think you need to measure your progress if you're doing anything. If you're trying to improve your health, you got to have some kind of markers that you're looking at. And that, like I said, was one of the things that I was most curious about when I started carnivore. So I wanted to take everything that I've learned and put that into a chapter. So that's the whole first half of the book. It's its own book in on its own. The second half of the book is 80 plus carnivore recipes. And it's not just like, how to grill a steak or something like that. I tried to do recipes from like lion all the way through to recipes that have dairy in them. There's desserts, there's breads. I even have a chapter of recipes that are my favorite keto cheat meals. So I like to do a keto cheat meal once a month because I do like vegetables. So I have like my wedge salad recipe with the homemade ranch dressing that's really clean. The carnivore breads, these flatbreads that we like to make that are so good. If you are craving sandwiches, that's a kind of a common thing is the breads. That's a really good chapter. So yeah, something for everybody. I really just want beginner carnivores all the way through veteran carnivores to be able to pull this book off their shelf and be like, something is in there for them, you know. So that's kind of what went into it. It's hard. Writing a book is hard, man. I've always wanted to, but I didn't know that this was going to be the first one, and it was a labor of love. We're in the editing process right now, and yeah, I'm really proud of it. I think it's going to be really great.
Good for you. That's a great answer. I'm so glad you're proud of your work, and it sounds like that will be an amazing resource. And just generally, just curious, like, are you feeling optimistic that some of this will change and become a little bit more mainstream? Are you feeling pessimistic that, well, we're finding a lot of people that are finding carnivore diets, the study headlines that are so bogus and terrible, they keep coming out, and the guidelines never change, and the ADA and the AHA and all these associations keep putting out nonsense. Like, how are you feeling overall, optimistic, pessimistic about getting this message out?
Very optimistic. So I think that the tides have been shifting the past few years. I think it's, we all have access to the internet. So you just do a quick Google search and you can find, answers to these lies that have been perpetuated by the big industry for a very long time. And I think a lot of people are sick of that. People are sick of being sick. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, I think carnivore has been growing in popularity the past few years. I don't think it has reached its peak, not even close. I think there's a lot of growth still to be had. And I guess my vision for the United States and the world at large is just, can you imagine if everybody was metabolically healthy? Like everybody. Just the amount of ideas and creativity and work and productivity and just cool things that we could all do if we felt good enough to do that. That's kind of my vision. Is it a bit optimistic? Yeah, of course. And it's never going to be everybody, but man, can you imagine? So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I think is what we're moving towards. People want to be healthy, And I see that more and more in the content that I see and just the stuff that's out there. And yeah, of course, keto and carnivore always get demonized by media and things like that. But I think that people are getting smarter and are more able to see like, this is crap. This
Yeah.
is not good science.
Well said. Yeah, somebody just texted me a few days ago some article that was recommending, high carbohydrate diets for type 1 and type 2 diabetics, which is just so nonsense. And the person was saying like we're so screwed in this country. And I just responded like, yeah, maybe, but there's going to be more of a delta between the people that are finding metabolic health and getting healthy and the people that are not. And whether that's going to ever be mainstream or not, I'm not sure, but the gap will be growing and the message is getting out there. I've talked to more strangers this year than I ever have that they don't look at me like I'm crazy when I say something about carnivore. They know somebody, they've heard of it, whatever. Like, so the message is getting out there, and you're a big part of that by creating all your content and putting the book out. So excited for that. Like I said, I would love to have you back on to discuss the book when it's coming out. But until then, Jenny, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, sure. So the main spot is YouTube at Jenny Mitich. I also have Instagram and TikTok. So Instagram is Mama Mitich and TikTok is Real Jenny Mitich. And yeah, that's probably the best places to find me. I have coaching. I have a private carnivore community and things like that. And then of course the book. You can always pre-order the book. That's a big way to support me right now. If we can get as many pre-orders as possible, we can get the book released in bookstores on release day instead of just online, which I think will, it's a bigger presence and we'll be able to help more people. So yeah, pre-ordering that book is a big deal too.
Yeah, pre-orders and reviews go such a long way, and people need to know that and make sure that they're not, reviewing great books like yours and getting them on the pre-order list because that is a great way to support. So we'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes and link the book so people can grab that. But Jenny, thank you so very much for all of your amazing work. You have such a cool journey, and I love how adventurous you are about experimenting with this kind of stuff and wanting to get the message out in a way that is connecting with people. We have to meet at one of these conferences. We just have to meet in person. This is getting a little ridiculous, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. And so grateful for you and all of your hard work and for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Yes, definitely. We will meet at the
We
next
will meet.
conference we're both at. But thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It was great. It was so great to host you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.